Greetings, greetings. This is Body-Culinary, sending you all some warm, positive vibrations. So I'm sitting here and working, and in the quiet, you can hear. So there was something I was contemplating, and it comes up from time to time. And these are some questions that I just wanted to put out there to share. Now, mind you, if anything I say doesn't resonate, feel free, with all due respect, to leave it right here. And you're also welcome to contribute respectfully to the dialogue. So, the question and the communication conversation today is around celibacy. So, if you haven't been to this channel before, welcome. This is Kwasa Peaceful Eating, aka Body-Culinary, and on this channel, I share motivation to start a garden, start growing something as a means to reconnect yourself and nurture your connection to nature. I encourage folks to cultivate a personal movement practice, first of all, because it's therapeutic and how it makes you feel, as well as it's good insurance for your body, as well as to consume peacefully, or at least the least harm possible to yourself, your own brain, arteries, organs, then your hair and skin, and then extending that out to the creatures that we share this big spaceship with. So I am a professional chef, a trainer, a fitness coach, a mother, and someone also that happens to have very fine textured Afro-cottony hair. So I share also something I'm very passionate about, is a journey of radical self-acceptance. So you're free, or feel free, if you find any value here, you're welcome to subscribe to the channel and or share the content with someone who you think that could find value. There's also a shorter video today on how to maximize use of this channel. I welcome you to declutter while you're listening to this channel, to chop some vegetables, or to get your yoga mat, create your space in your home and stretch while you're listening. That way you can maximize your time that you're on the internet. So that being said, I was sitting here in the quiet, aside from, different creatures and, roosters and all that other stuff. I was contemplating celibacy, and also, some people say celibacy. I think I would even go further to say abstinence, right? In the current climate that we're in. It's such a climate of so many vices, and that's not demonizing natural human desires to be intimate with each other. But it's a different energetics. There's something that's very palpable that's happening, out here in popular culture. And, I've given it some thought many times over the years. So there are some questions that I was thinking of. I'm going to share them. And again, you're welcome to comment respectfully, keeping in mind that that's how we got here. We all got here through intimate relations between male and female energy, between those different sets of reproductive organs. There was a definitive process that happened for all of us to get here. However you want to identify, that's everyone's right, and that's everyone's personal experience. And that's not my blah 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 business. But I do know we all come here respectfully out of the sacred union of masculine and feminine energy. There's the spark of life, right? So I say that to say, in an age of whopping and little nosing, and those are still relatively new, right? Relatively new. There is a move right now to make certain kinds of relations. Some folks are moving to normalize that with children. We see constantly a lot of behaviors from adults being projected onto children, and folks moving to alter laws around that, laws around violation of women. Those things are being modified. So there's a lot happening in terms of blurring the lines of healthy boundaries. And again, I want to emphasize, I really have a deep love and respect for all human beings. I can respect, and I do respect, other people's food choices, because I've eaten all kinds of junk food and every piece of animal flesh. Not every, but I used to eat animal flesh and cadavers at one point. I don't at this point, but I respect other people's their choices, you know, and I can learn something from anybody. That being said, there's a blurring of lines, and something I contemplate is in healthy boundaries is safety. And I also contemplate, I don't know if we're encouraged to think about it, but what are going to be a lot of the after effects or unforeseen after effects of us not thinking long term. It doesn't appear that we're in a climate of human beings thinking of long term. Even though we do hear talk of global warming, it still seems to be a struggle. It seems to be a struggle for masses of human beings to really comprehend and sit with respect for the earthship, the living organism that we feed from, that provides us with everything that we need for sustenance. So the question I would actually have to say more so than I think there's even a distinction between celibacy and abstinence. I think this is a very real consideration for many of us on the planet. I can speak as a woman, right? I can definitely speak as a mother. And if we just notice patterns without demonizing anyone at any camp, I often invite folks to step back and turn down the volume on any of our particular preferences, colors, gift of gab, whoever your favorite spokesperson or whatever. If we turn down the volume and we look at the behavior, we can definitely see that we are being enticed into certain behaviors without thinking long term. Let's say, for example, sometimes I wonder with some of the music videos that are so hyper sexualized, if there were warnings, it's like there are warnings on a pack of cigarettes, if there were explicit pictures of diseases and physical, right? Physical ramifications or any, you know, totally impersonal of what are the results of certain kinds of engagement, right? Greetings. So here are some simple questions I invite you all, like we could kind of say like a collective contemplation, right? There's relaxation, right? We could call it meditation, but I make an effort to remove the labels, right? Because we don't necessarily need a religion. If you have one, that's fine. But there's certain things that are unifying. And one of the things I know for sure is that we're all going to exit this planet and life as we know it. That's a fact. Not open to anyone's debate or, you know, opinion. Second fact, we are all come from a source, and we all have a source of divine, right? Other than this worldly stuff, everybody's opinion. There's a divine connection, right? To our onboard innate intelligence, right? Just like when you gasp for air, that's a form of intelligence. Every single human being without exception was born with that intelligence. We're getting messages, we get interpretations from different scriptures and different books, but we're all connected with an onboard intelligence, right, that we're each born with. So I invite you in contemplation is relaxation, which we get access to through just breathing and being quiet, and then starting to just notice the screen of thoughts that's going across the mind. In contemplation, greetings, is just a turning within, which is quiet. So we're kind of just closing this to turn the attention this way, start to become more cognizant of the different sounds that are going on around us. But if you just are noticing and are intentionally aware for a moment, you'll start to make the distinction between the noises from outside, the activities outside, and an awareness from the inside. And there's a connection to the source that we come from. It's really beyond a language. So if there's an intelligence, it's like you gasp for air and your heart is beating and there's a drive to be alive. There's an intelligence that's actually a guidance system that's going on all the time. So in contemplation, we just simply ask a question. There's something, you know, advice, something you're working through. You ask a question of your own intelligence, right? So that you can heighten or cultivate your listening to your own awareness of the things that you're doing mindlessly, right? To guide your activity, right? So contemplation, you ask a question and you listen for the answer. So it may not be verbal. It's an inner listening of your onboard divine innate intelligence. There's a communication that's going on all the time, but there's so much noise. We most likely don't even notice it. And then we may also be confused, not confused, just a lot of mixed messages because there's so many different interpretations of this intelligence. So I'm asking this question of abstinence. Some people may say celibacy. I think celibacy is like you're taking a vow, or the distinction, at least as I comprehend it. In celibacy, you're taking a particular vow, religious vow, spiritual vow, some kind of vow that you're taking to not engage, right, intimately with our reproductive organs. And then in abstinence, you're refraining. You are making a choice to refrain. It doesn't mean that you're not attracted. Those things don't, that you can't get aroused, but you're just making a conscious choice to refrain for different lengths and periods of time, and very intentionally. So the contemplation that we're asking today, or that I'm asking, is a series of questions, right? And I invite you to consider. And I invite you to consider for a reason. Now, just as like many people may wonder, as a personal trainer and fitness coach, why would I ask people to grow something? Why would I ask people to nurture a plant? What the heck does that have to do with fitness and personal training? Well, it's been 3 decades at least inside this fitness and nutrition industry, and I've noticed some very distinct patterns. And so giving people new programs, training, live food, healthy food, you name it, every kind of physical tool at folks' disposal. It hasn't been enough to shift this. And also the folks that I have noticed who are in the smaller amount, not in the majority, in the minority in terms of numbers, there are some very distinct patterns of awareness, and there are also some shifts in perspective. There are some permanent mind shifts. There are some ahas, right? There's a shift in thinking that is not mine. I have my own. I will have to continue to have my own paradigm shift. But people actually have a shift in thinking. Their frame of reference changes. That is usually how people make permanent change. For example, I can tell you my personal example. You'll have your own experience. Certain things that I considered food don't occur to me as food anymore because of education and because of experience, because of discomfort, because of seeing so much of the results within myself and other people, that it stops me in my tracks. So I have interrupted the program on something occurring to me as a treat. There's some things that may still smell, the smell of bread or certain holiday smells that still may smell nice. But then also the last time I walked through a mall and I smelled all of the some kind of cinnamon buns and whatever, it just smelled like flour, refined sugar. So there's an interrupt in my own program. A lot of that was done very intentionally with education, if this makes sense. So the question today around celibacy, if you like, or I would say abstinence, right? Because there's a connection to this and our mindless eating. There's a connection, I have observed, there's a connection to us putting ourselves and our reproductive organs and other people in harm's way, when logically we know that a lot of the behaviors are actually endanger our well-being, our physical well-being, our mental, emotional well-being, and they will likely have a negative effect, an adverse effect on the people we engage in with. And we know logically, as logical human beings, it is likely that there will be a negative adverse effect on potential human beings. This is something that we know for a fact. For a fact, this is a likely outcome. Yet, hopefully by now, folks are starting to put some time into comprehending the human psyche, which most marketers and people endeavoring to sell us things, they're very, very well aware of what triggers elicits certain types of behaviors in human beings. So I would dare say, just like nurturing a plant can click on certain types of intelligences and really foster a listening and help us cultivate a trust and a listening, which can save you so much time and energy and can really refine your critical thinking and your discernment. See, critical thinking and discernment can really save you a lot of time when you're struggling to diet and you're struggling to find the motivation. Critical thinking clarity is literally worth more than its weight in gold. So here are the questions. Here we go. In terms of abstinence, they're very simple questions. But I invite you to turn inward and to contemplate these questions. One, if you think of from the first time that you had intimate relations with your reproductive organs with another human being, from the first time, I want you to ask yourself, was it all that you had hoped for? Were you intending, at whatever age, maybe it was a young age, were you intending to feel loved, cared, nurtured, validated, protected? Was it all that you had hoped for? Were you hoping in your imagination for a father figure, a mother figure, someone, a pinup model from a magazine? Was it all that you had imagined it to be? And part two to that, I want you to ask, how long did it last? And was it in a nurturing, safe environment? Right? And also contemplate, notice if you felt any shame. So you feel free to replay this. Number two, was the act that consummation with another human being who you intimately, you collaborated to share your bodily energy, your bodily fluids, right? Knowing there's a potential for other human beings to come forth from it. Was it intimate? I want you to ask yourselves, was it intimate? When I say intimate, did you feel really heard, or did you feel rushed? Did you feel panicked? Were you nervous? Were you in hiding? Were you hiding from other adults or other people? You know, did you have to hide who the person was? You don't have to say it here online. Did you have to hide from another person? Maybe this person could have been another relationship, or maybe they didn't reveal to you they were another relationship. But was it really intimate? Did you feel like really safe and like you were really able to totally relax with this other human being? That's number two. It's intimacy. Number three, was the act of your first interactions with someone intimately, was it respectful? Did you encounter respect, male and female? Did you encounter a respect for your feelings, your emotions, your lack of experience? That the person was experienced, not experienced? Was there respect in the sense of, did you check to see that you both were, that your body parts were healthy? Was there respect in the sense of you had a conversation about how you might feel afterwards? Was there respect? And respect, again, would also include, you know, safety, that you were in a safe space where you didn't have to worry. Was it respectful? Was there care or consideration? You know, in terms of your age, I don't know if you're underage or not. Nobody knows but you. But did parents, other people need to be contacted because you weren't fully able to provide for yourself as an adult? So, was it respectful? Did you feel respected? Looking back in hindsight, did you respect the other person? Did you even like this person? Did you hold them in esteem? And you're holding them in esteem. You looked up to them, right? As a person like that had values or respect? Or did you look up to this person because they had nice clothes on, they had a nice outfit on, right? Or you enamored by their eye color? Or maybe you were enamored by their physique or their muscles or their pecs or their chest hair or their mustache. Was it a respectful act? Was it respectful? Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3. Number 4, was it healthy? Greetings. Was it healthy? When you had your first intimate relations, was it healthy? Did you have a respectful, informed dialogue, communication, in which both parties were heard and listened before you engaged? Did you have a communication around health? Do you know what healthy reproductive organs, what they look like in male and female? And proper cleansing. And let me not say proper, let me say efficient cleansing and hygiene before, during, and after. Did you have conversations around different forms of preventative measures of parenting human beings and stewarding human beings to the side if that wasn't your intention? So was it healthy? Was it healthy for you mentally or emotional? So that means you didn't have to have shame. You didn't have to hide. You didn't have to be afraid you were going to get a beating, or somebody was going to get beat up. Your brothers were going to come after somebody, or somebody's else's girlfriend was going to fight this person. Was it healthy? Were you relaxed, and were your body parts healthy? Did you examine beforehand your own intimate reproductive organs? And did you take the time to examine each other's reproductive organs? And hopefully this isn't too much. I want to keep this as respectful as possible. These are just my quiet meandering. Number 5, your first intimate relations. Was it responsible? Was it responsible? Did you have a communication with each other calmly, where you were able to listen to each other, right? Which would say something for our basic communication skills, and that's another something to look at. But did you have a conversation? Should something happen that you hadn't planned for? Now, mindfully, be mindful. Hopefully, or would be nice. It would make sense. It would be responsible if there are many things that we had covered before. Now, this might seem like it's too much. Oh, who's going to go through all of that? But we could look around and look at the CDC numbers in males and females, especially females, right? HIV, all the myriad of diseases, STDs and STIs, the depression, the eating ourselves to the point of deformity, not to make us bad or wrong, as a coping mechanism for stress, as we're stuffing all these emotions down, not feeling that we have a safe space to talk about these things. I invite you to ask, our intimate relations, the first time, because the first time set the tone for everything that's coming after. Was it responsible on your part? Do you feel that you're responsible? This is just to learn lessons for myself, not to make ourselves wrong. There's a distinction between making ourselves wrong and making ourselves and holding ourselves accountable. So I invite you in your quiet moments to consider your first intimate relations. Was it responsible? Did you have the guidance and conversation of responsible adults, or was your guidance folks from in the hood on the corner, or your homegirls who were just as young and as inexperienced as you, or other immature adults, or young adults, or was it TV, or was it popular music, popular culture, or was it a combination, of all of these different things? That's number 5. Number 6. In your first intimate relations, was your choice with whoever you chose, or however you chose each other, was that choice affected by others? Was it affected by other people around you? For example, we have some adults that say, aren't you going to have a child? Right? You might be young thinking you're too young to have a child. And someone will be saying, when are you going to have children? Or if you're a single woman of a certain age. Your choice to engage with somebody else intimately for the first time, was it affected by your parents, your aunties, your friends, people at the lunch table, your sorority? Was it affected by others, your cousins, people that you go for happy hour with, your running buddies that you hang out in your study group? Well, some folks in your choir, I don't know. Were your choices affected by others? Was it affected by so-called celebrities in an article that you might have read? Number 7, your first intimate relations Was there a level of trust? Was there a deep level of trust? Did for women folk, did you trust the male or whoever the person was you interacted with? Did you trust them with your sacred reproductive organs, perhaps in ignorance, perhaps in being hard-headed, perhaps in being rebellious? However, without blame, right? This is just an inquiry. Were you trusting? Were you blindly trusting? Were you trusting in naivete? Were you trusting not having any kind of experience, a lack of a frame of reference? Menfolk, were you trusting the boys at the lunchroom table? Were you perhaps pressured by older cousins or people in your neighborhood? Were you pressured by a gang? Peer pressure, high school? Were you looking at the after school special on TV? Were you looking at popular cartoons, anime? Were you, did you trust people blindly? And if you trusted other people, where did that trust come from? Did your trust come from your interpretation of religious scriptures? Did your trust perhaps come from an authority figure or someone that was in a position of authority? Maybe the significant other of a father, mother, or boyfriend, girlfriend, or your brother or sister's homie. Did you trust in someone blindly, and did somebody betray a trust, right? I want you to think back to your first relations. This all can affect all the mindless choices that we're making and also affect a lot of the 6 basic fears. I invite you to look up on your own the 6 basic fears. Okay, so number 8, coming to the end of this list. Number 8, do you have, well, let's go back there. Did you have a vetting process? A vetting process means, like an interview process, you have a list of questions that you will ask that can be disqualifiers, that are actual research, right? Because you understand the risk, which many of us may not have. So that may be something to contemplate also. You're comprehending the weight of the risk that's involved. So let's say, for example, as a woman, we hold a lot of potential risk. And this is a lot of debate, but I'm not here for any debates, although you're welcome to comment respectfully in the comment section. Whew. A vetting process would be like you asking questions to qualify, to determine if this person is qualified for you to trust or to engage with. If it's stranger danger, if it's an irresponsible person, if the person can take the weight of the responsibility. The same thing could be with a female, because I know I have male offspring. So I know for me, what I would tell nephews or young men, young women, both parties today, actually, you can have STD tests at home. So to me, I know as a young woman, this is a conversation I broach to people, you know, and my young age, trying to have like certain conversations that I thought were protective. But did you have a vetting process for safety? Maybe many of us didn't understand emotional stability, mental stability, because, you know, with popular culture, those messages of responsibility are not pumped on the screen with everybody looking like a vixen or like a whatever. But did you have a vetting process? And do you have a vetting process today for who you let into your intimate space, into your physical space, into your orifices, when we all know logically, but we know the human mind is not logical? Do you have a vetting process so that you can have some kind of, right, especially when you're younger, some people are talking about love yourself. That may sound like a foreign abstract concept. So is there a vetting process that no matter how enticing the package is, that you can run a litmus test? Like you can ask questions that if these things don't check off, you do not proceed or pass go. Did you have a vetting process back then, right? And with your first time that you were intimate, and then how did that affect the next time that you were intimate? So this is a community study here. Okay, so let's see. Number 8, do you have a vetting process? And did you have a vetting process? Number 9. Do you feel responsible? Did you feel responsible? And do you feel responsible? Did you feel responsible for the emotional or mental health of the person that you were intimate with? So this one definitely for men folk, whether you realize it or not. As a masculine presence, many women look to you as a kind of like as a father figure, even in our subconscious, right? Because our first relationships are with our parents, even if the other parent is not there, right? Still in society, still with all this fluid stuff, there are still certain things that we identify with. We still can identify masculine and feminine energies or protective energies, if you will. So, did you feel responsible? Any kind of response? Did you feel any kind of responsibility for not just the person's pleasure? Did you feel any kind of responsibility for the other person's mental, emotional health? Even women, let's say somebody's attracted to you, not attracted to you. Do you feel like because now it's an age where, I don't know, we rationalize, or I hear a lot of talk of how disconnected we can be. We have a tendency to brag about how disconnected we can be from the act. But it doesn't appear that's playing out. So did you have any kind of sense of responsibility for if the person was mature or stable or responsible here? And how could we measure that, right? Looking back now in hindsight, how would you measure if somebody is mentally or emotionally stable? One idea might be the person being able to, or demonstrating that they're responsible for their own well-being, right? And having some healthy boundaries. Okay. And then here was the last question. Number 10. Did you feel obligated? Did you feel obligated to provide? Did you feel obligated to provide either intimacy or offer up your body parts to the other person? Was there a feeling of obligation? Did you feel obligated to engage with this person because they were attracted to you, they were in love, which we know for many of us is infatuation, especially at a young age? Did you feel obligated to provide safety, to provide either safety, or did you feel or affection to the other person? Enjoy the book. Have you found sacred women groups or sacred women to go through the gateways with? It's recommended but not required, because someone flowers have stated they had better without. I don't understand the last part of your question. I have the book I was planning on reading before the end of next month. 2 books. So write a plan referring to this in the second one. Well, right now this is just what I'm just saying from my own experience. I think it can be a valuable conversation, or a valuable, not just a conversation, a communication and a contemplation, right? That's how we started off today. This communication this is something for you to contemplate in your quiet moments. So this is not from that book. This is just right off the top of my head from this point. So the perhaps sacred woman for many women, I didn't realize a lot of women are not having these conversations, or men. Mature conversation, not just about who's hitting it, what did you have on, what was your lingerie, the responsibility and accountability. Those conversations are not being had with all the free for all of using our body parts and expressing how we want to as human beings, of which we have the right. It's not a balanced conversation. And so thinking long term, we're not encouraged to think long term about the effects of our actions, even if our actions are in ignorance. So I think perhaps this conversation could be very valuable to somebody in their 20s, 30s, but not exclusive. Also to 40s, 50s, even perhaps men folks. No one is having these conversations. So many folks, very much sheep-like or going along with the group. I'm not going to demonize that. Many of us are going along with the group in order not to feel the odd one out, or in order to not feel alone. So for some of us, the book might be all we have, but also many of us, I could tell you, have had the book and got the books and still turn around and put ourselves in harm's way. you know. So I'm not the one at this phase of life. I think the books are great. And I know there's certain books I read, like Heal Thyself. I read that a gazillion times and gave that to all of my family members. That book is like, I wrote so much in those books. If somebody has my copies in Brooklyn, they're going to see all of my notes inside that book for years and years and years of me reading it over and over. So I don't make, excuse me, I'm plugging this in. I don't make the older adults around me necessarily wrong, but I realized for a long time that I was on my own. And I think even today, we have to be, I think it's important to be mindful of going and looking for sacred women or sacred men's groups. That a lot of groups can become very culty. They can become very cult-like, or they're still coming away from one peer pressure, and then there's another type of peer pressure. So I observed that across the board in society, with religious groups, pseudo or so-called spiritual groups, everybody in their different camps of whatever labels people want to identify with. Again, that's why I say if you turn down the volume, you may notice that a lot of the patterns are the same. So, which is why I like to emphasize, without making anybody wrong, I encourage folks to start to cultivate our own onboard divine innate common sense. And common sense in an environment where where fear is being triggered, which scrambles our common sense. And there's a lot of messages and programs that we have all been affected by. So if we just run the numbers, most human beings today we're putting ourselves in harm's way in ways that have long-term damage. So you could call yourself this label, that label, I eat this, I identify as this. But if you turn down the volume, a lot of the behaviors are ending up in the same place. So that's why I brought this communication. And I'm going to move forward saying this. My godparents, who are some of those, sometimes I just marvel at my grandma Lou and my godparents. I would just share with my sister. I love them very dearly because they were so practical and so full of so full of just, these were grown-ups, creative adults, responsible adults who had some life experience, and they gave us some practical wisdom in terms of like, and I'll share this gem, right? Our spiritual practices, right? That my godparents, now we weren't their children. Our spiritual practice was just a bunch of young people, young adults that showed up, around dance and culture. And so they gave us some stuff to do, some volunteer work to do, community work to do, because we showed up. And so they said, well, stuff they had, they put it into us. And when I look back, I look at how vulnerable we all were in seeking knowledge. I don't know if we would call it knowledge. We were seeking guidance. We were seeking folks to look up to. They were cool. They were accomplished. When I look back now, what they have accomplished, and they're still consistent to this day. What I think is really interesting, I was like, wow, they didn't take advantage of us. They didn't try to jump into any of our drawers. They didn't try to stiff us for any money. And when I look at the climate today, I see that is rampant. Folks who are in a certain position, right? A power play either with money or so-called knowledge or more exposure, looks, talent. There's a tendency to exploit or misuse folks that are coming seeking information. Either you get snake oil, or you get manipulated, or you get drawn into some kind of a cult. Human beings are seeking. They're seeking family. They're seeking the attention from fathers we didn't have, parents who weren't emotionally present. So some folks are very well aware of these patterns. So I'm asking these questions that you can consider in your own quiet contemplation. I invite you to consider whatever answers you come up with, if wherever your head was at and whatever decisions you've made, only you know in your quiet moments, if it affected all of your decisions thereafter. See, a lot of the choices that we're making are affecting how we're eating, overeating, and medicating. People want just a pill or they want a herb. But sometimes it's the choices. We're not looking at the choices we're making and what's at the root of our choices. Even if we're nice people, even if we're in ignorance. There's choices. If you're at a younger age, if you're making a choice, and I'm saying this is not dependent on any religion. I really want to emphasize that this is independent of a religion. If you have one, it's working for you. Kudos, great. Well, if it's working for you, rock out. But however, this is independent of any religion, any group, anything of which you're labeling yourself. A lot of the time, because there's this fear of being alone, that at some point when we're younger and we have a certain calling or our common sense is calling out for us to take a certain path, but we make a decision to follow the rest of the group without a vetting process. For example, I would say to my young offspring, a lot of the folks at the lunchroom table don't know what they're talking about. So I might not be your gender, but a lot of them don't have any experience. You know, sometimes boys at the lunchroom table, they have a tendency to brag. If they're talking about a fight, they always knock the other one out. They always want to fight. When somebody's describing a fight, they always got the best of the other person, right? And so there's a lot of misinformation. So as much as I can relate that to a young person, and the same goes for women and young women. This even can be observed in older men, just like the ego and the bragging rights. And we don't realize that we're putting and have put ourselves greatly in harm's way. And it kind of gets compounded. It affects our next decisions for what we allow in, and it affects our next decisions. And we're not even thinking about this. Many of us may be underdeveloped in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and yes, I'm going to say even 70s. As I had a mature woman tell me that worked with older people, said you'd be amazed at how many folks in old folks' homes, you know, have been free of diseases their whole life and then pop up with something while they're in a senior home. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So I know a lot of folks won't have these conversations. And I know folks are like, where are the recipes? Give me more recipes. Child, I don't give so many recipes and training programs. There's no shortage. There's no shortage. There's no shortage. I invite you to consider the shadow work, right? Especially if you're dealing with food. I'm calling it food shadow work, right? I invite you to, without judging yourself, to observe the mindless habits that we all have. No one is exempt. I have made an effort in 30 years to be very, very aware. So that's why I say I've watched for years documentaries of junkies. I was always fascinated by what drives human behavior, self-sabotaging behavior, and what drives us to get into action around things that are our calling and things that we say that we value, that are our core values. Because a lot of times we're also munching and medicating because we're out of alignment and we're not in the action around what we say we value. That's an irritation. That's a weight. That's a weight. It's going to eat and eat and eat at you until you get into action. So I just wanted to share that. I'd invite you to share that with a young woman, to have a respectful dialogue around it. These are the inner workings of the quiet mind in the garden, or while I'm sitting here working. So a lot of times when stuff just comes to me in quiet, I can't even keep up. I can't even keep up with the stuff that's coming out of my brain. I can't get it into a book fast enough with all the different projects and work that I have to do. So enjoy the interaction so far. I'll catch you. All right, Cosmic. So also do check the video. There are 3 suggestions that I made for maximizing your time on the internet, getting the most out of your time, leveraging the interaction of the internet, leveraging and creating support for yourself. Support work. Support is a lot. There's not to be underestimated. Competing for the very valuable allegiance, competing for the allegiance of your focus and your attention. There is a competition, a serious campaign, a scientific formula to garner your attention and your focus. So I invite you to claim it back, because when you look around and you're not able to get the motivation to prepare your food, and to engage in self-care. I invite you in your quiet moment to consider why. So you're welcome to replay this on your quiet moments on your drive. Take a look at the other video. 3 ways to really get your most out of this channel. And y'all create a great rest of the day on purpose. You're welcome to support the channel. If anyone needs to reach out to me, you feel free to reach out to me at info@bodyculinary.com. There is Common Sense Nutrition coming up, Effective Fitness that is coming up, a workshop for children. If you are a family and you have children that you really need to overhaul the way that you are consuming, because you may see that you have unhealthy adipose tissue, which is a precursor for diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease. They travel in packs. So those are some things to contemplate. Create support for yourself, right? So make use of this channel. Check out the puppet series. It is children friendly. It's something clean enough you can watch with your children. It's 9 to 10 short free episodes on this channel. Sister Butterfly, Sister Monkey, Learn to Eat Better. Do check out the Etsy shop where there is these hand cut. That's only a limited amount of Afro. And for my UGC, if any of my UGC out there, there's one that's called Ugly. They know what that charm is all about. There are plant milk bags, and there are a few of the Grandma Lou hand coconut graters that I love to use. All right, y'all. Create a great day on purpose.